So let's talk a little bit about why we're here, why we're doing this sermon series. The church hasn't always been super great about talking about mental health. And so why do you think that is?
I mean, I don't know. I think it's hard to talk about mental health because when you do, it invariably opens up questions about where you're at. And I think most people don't like to kind of let you know when they're vulnerable. And so I think it's just a hard thing to talk about. Plus, the Bible doesn't ever use the words mental health. Right? It doesn't ever talk about depression or anxiety or bipolar or anything like that. And so a lot of people feel like, well, if the Bible doesn't say it, then it's not really related to that. But, the Bible talks about our whole being and how sin impacts things and what our human experience is like. And so it's very applicable. I just think not all churches will make that step.
Mm-hmm. So what was kind of the heart behind this sermon series? Why is it important that we are addressing this and talking about this? David, you want to take this one?
Why it's important? I think, we've had, quite a few people that have brought it up. This is something that it's come more prevalent in my own life, especially through Celebrate Recovery and stuff, and coming to terms with some of my own struggles and stuff like that. Again, it's, I think when we were just talking, Matt and I were talking about a sermon series, and it's always trying to figure out what's something that the church needs to hear. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's one of the hardest things. You kind of look at the landscape of what's going on, and mental health in and of itself is becoming such a huge topic. Even the last few years. I mean, I deal with it regularly, even with my job, when it comes to substance abuse, because mental health is such a huge factor in that. But then, you turn on the TV anymore and your news and everything like that. And I think it's extremely important for us to talk about it because, when you're asking the question of why it's important, when I think about mental health in the church, I think we've done an amazing job of living in the church with a lot of assumptions. And what I mean by that is I look at different people and I say, well, they're the perfect family, mm-hmm. right? Or they got the perfect marriage, mm-hmm. or that's the perfect Christian. And so it's twofold. I'm making some assumptions about others, but then as we are in the church long enough, we start having to live out those assumptions, right? So, people see me as the perfect, father, so then I got to be the perfect father, or think that I am, or at least pretend like I am, So that's why when you start talking mental health issues, it's such a hard topic in the church because we're so afraid to peel away that mask of. Well, if I do that means for the last 20 years, then I'm going to have to admit to people I didn't have the perfect marriage, or I didn't have the perfect, faith that you thought I had, or so then we just get in this cycle of assumption, right? Mm-hmm. Like I don't want to do that. So that's how I think by having this sermon series, it almost lets us enter into a place of giving ourselves permission. Mm-hmm. Like let's give ourselves permission to admit we're not perfect, mm-hmm. and we don't, we have struggles and. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that'll happen through this. Mm-hmm. It's kind of let people realize it's like you're not alone on this.
I think when we try so hard to pretend that we're perfect and have these masks on, it actually perpetuates that myth of people that go to church, right? Mm-hmm. That we are perfect and we come here and we do all right. Yeah, and I think that pushes people away even more. Mm-hmm. So why, just us being transparent with each other as a church body? Why is that so important?
Well, I think, going back to what David said, there is something so profound. What you said was so great about this idea that, after a while, I feel like I have to be that, mm-hmm. right? And think of the weight of that. Yeah. That's why I hope you're right. I hope this sermon series and us just saying, look, and us having this conversation says, this is where I struggle. Mm-hmm. I hope that it allows us to hit the reset button for people. Because the weight of having to fake it, mm-hmm. Or of having to be somebody that you don't naturally feel like you are, that is heavy. Mm-hmm. And it can weigh you down, and it can cause all kinds of problems and wreak all kinds of havoc. So I hope you're right. I hope mm-hmm. this does give people the opportunity to hit the reset button and just say, okay, you know what? Our cards are all on the table. And you know what? If David's not going to pretend to be perfect, then I don't have to pretend to be perfect either. Mm-hmm. And we can live there. And so I think that transparency is so key because it lets people be real. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, you would know this better from Celebrate Recovery, but I don't think people can really heal until they can at least be real about where they're at.
No,
you know, I mean, that's the counselor in me. And I did counseling for a lot of years before I was a pastor, and that was something we would always push towards. That you've got to admit where you are.
Speaking of celebrate recovery, I mean, the very first step that you have to take is the whole first part of it. It's all talking about denial. Like until you face your own denial. There's actually a passage in Scripture, and I wish I can remember where it's at. I'm pretty sure it's in Jeremiah somewhere, but it talks about prophecy and God saying you can't heal a wound by admitting it's not, or saying it's not there. You know, so it's like this denial. And what's really sad, even when speaking about celebrate recovery, and this is going to be true for anybody through the sermon series and anytime we do this, denial is something that we never actually leave denial. It always tries to creep back in. So we're never not fighting denial. Denial is constantly trying to creep back in. But it's also, that's the one thing that most people will never leave. We won't leave denial. Denial is where we still make our excuses, or we try to make it that it's not as bad as it is, or we compare, like comparisons, like, yeah, well, I'm not struggling like so-and-so, or whatever it is. That's all denial. It's, I'm not going to face the fact of what it is.
It's more than denial, because I think people feel like they don't have a right to feel that way. Like I think of people that I know that are really depressed and really struggle. And part of what they will say to me is, but when I look at my life, you know, I have a home to live in, I'm married, I have kids, whatever it is, like I have a job, I work, like what right do I have to feel so depressed? I just need to get over it. I just need to do better. And so,
or other people tell them that. Like that's what we've struggled with, is other people will tell my husband who struggles with depression, like, what do you have to be depressed about? And so for him to surround himself with people who understand and who, like, that's why I think this series is going to be so critical, because then he's not going to feel so alone. And that's, I mean, I think that's the key to this this entire thing.
There's some touchiness to it also, and there's a lot to it. But when we're talking about this, I think about me. So anybody, when I say this, I don't want anybody to be like, "How dare you?" I'll bring it towards me. The issue with it is when you do have some mental health stuff that you struggle with, right? I can't take blame. I won't take blame for the depressive stuff that I feel, right? But then there's the flip side. I do have to take responsibility for the things that I've done because of my mental health stuff, right? So then it gets this really weird, like, because you want people to know, like, hey, you can't take ownership of certain things, but there are things I have to take ownership with.
So I think one of the things we have to note, though, is there's a difference between mental health issues and mental illness. Right, and I think you're right. Like when we talk about how Satan is working, and you know, just the depressive nature of this world that we live in, there are things that cause mental health issues in a lot of us. But there is such a thing, though, as just mental illness, which is really a health issue, the same as cancer would be a health issue, or the same as diabetes is a health issue. And like diabetes, sometimes it's juvenile and you've got it from birth, and sometimes it's type 2 and you get it as an adult because of your poor diet, and you might have mental illness the same way. But Malia, you said the world is broken. Like sin wreaks havoc on nature, on relationships, and it wreaks havoc in the human body. Our bodies, which were perfect, are broken and they decay, and that includes mental illness as much as it includes physical illness. And so I think, you know, yes, we need to talk about like the situations of life, because that's how we can control what we can control. And that's how we ask God to help us deal with things, and that's how we maintain our sanity and our mental health. But I think sometimes we have to recognize there are deeply rooted mental illnesses, the same as there are deeply rooted physical illnesses that are just part of a fallen world. And it stinks, right? Nobody wants to have leukemia, right? And we, you know, it's terrible and it's tragic, and we know as Christians that's a result of the fall. Nobody wants to have borderline personality disorder, but you know, sometimes those are things that are part of a fallen world, and we just have to. I think we have to wrap our heads around the fact that they exist on the same plane sometimes.
So I think one thing that would be helpful to kind of talk about, depending on who is watching this, because I think people don't always feel this, but does God care about our mental illness? What do you think, Sean?
I mean, God cares about us. So, I mean, of course he cares about our mental illness. I think that mental illness can be used. So, I said earlier that my husband battles depression and anxiety. It's not something that we would have ever asked for or wanted. But as he gets older and is able to share his story with other people, you can definitely see where God has been at work this whole time. And so it wasn't just a fluke that he has this, but so not only, and so while Tim may have the battle of the mental illness, I feel like God's provided knowledge in him to help other kids, other people, and that's a way that God provides for his people is by being in community and being able to share struggles. And that's a way, that God cares about our mental health. He puts people in other people's lives to support and lift them up. And that's part of, I think, being brave enough to share your story is that, if God has given you this, you have to be willing to use it. And so, and it was like David was saying about, you want to look like the perfect family, the perfect this, the perfect that. We just have to decide, is that more important or is reaching other people more important?
So I think that it is important. And I think as we have talked about this series and have been preparing it, I think one of the things that we found is that sharing our personal stories is important, and that something about being transparent with each other, that we don't have it all together, that we don't, and to kind of take those masks off is pretty crucial. Especially, I think especially for you guys as the ones that are shepherding us and leading us from the stage most Sundays, to see that, you guys aren't perfect either, and that you guys have your own struggles too. So,
I would say this, that over the course of the merger, I've gotten to work with David more intimately than maybe before, but one of the things that I've always appreciated about David is he leads the way in this. It's significantly easier for me to be transparent as a leader when I have it modeled for me, and I that's something that God has wired in you that you're just good at, to say, hey, no masks. Even when we were talking about core values for the merged church, for Blessed Hope Community Church, one of the things that you were insistent about was, look, we got to get to a place where we take off the masks and we just be real. We're authentic, not in name, but in actual authenticity. We just have real relationships. And there's something so important about that. And I think you've led the way in that, I think, in a lot. And so, that has to speak to people. It does to me. And I think it matters.
I've even felt that when we've had staff meetings too, I feel there's another level of authenticity happening there, and just with what we are sharing with each other, and it's been good.
It's not easy by any means. It's not. And what I say by that is I think it's extremely important to be there. Like no masks, no that kind of stuff. But at the same time, that scares me to death. Because there's still stuff. I can be pretty open, like this is what I'm feeling, or this is not necessarily what I'm feeling, but like this is where I'm at. You guys joke with me all the time that I'm the guy that comes in is like not feeling it, like I'm not here today.
But you can be so open about that.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. Like, I'm not there yet.
The part that scares even myself, though, even with this, and this, I think other people, almost everybody's going to be there. Everybody's going to be there. There's another level even below that of being open, right? Not the open, but it's one of those things where I was thinking about this in churches, and we're the merger. We're still getting comfortable with a lot of the people here, still trying to learn, meet a lot of people and stuff like that. So when I say this, I'm not saying this towards here. I'm just saying my experiences in church. If I look back at my life in church, and I can look at people and say, well, I was close to them. I was close to them. I was close to them. If I really get honest with it, it was still an acquaintance kind of a closeness, right? Like how many people can I list in a church that I could go literally bare my soul to? Like just, I'm bearing it, right? It's coming out. A person that I know when I'm broken, I can go and just literally just shed tears in front of, and they're not going to try to fake, you know what I'm saying? So I say that because the church still has a long way to go. We got a lot of people we're close with, but they're the people like, hey, let's go hang out. Let's go have some fun.
Sure.
Let's go. I might tell you I'm struggling a little bit today, or you're gonna pray for me. But the next level is, and we're not gonna have that with everybody. That's not the point.
Yeah.
The next level is when we have those people in the church.
But you need to have it with somebody.
That's what, you do, and so that's where I'm saying, like, that's the stuff that even scares me, because I've slowly been creeping in that direction, but it still scares you, right? Because that's where you're completely taking away everything that is guarding you, right? Like, you are bearing the complete underbelly of everything that is tender and is scary. And
this connects back to what you said earlier, right? That's where Satan wants you to stay away from.
Yeah.
So he tells you, right? He tells you that when you do that, you're vulnerable. When you open that up, that people will reject you. When you go there, that you're liable to end up alone. And I think,
so all those fears you already have.
Yes, like he is the master manipulator.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Just messing with it. And so that's where it's like, we need to understand what real freedom is. We need to understand where that comes from and how that works. And then, as leaders in a church, and as the church of Blessed Hope Community Church, Vinton, in general, we need to be better at making that okay. Right? Instead of that whole, it's that transactional analysis from the 70s, right? I'm okay, you're okay, we're all okay. Maybe instead it's like, none of us are okay, and that's okay. Right? Because God wants to do a new thing.
This is actually a statement that I use in Celebrate Recovery. It's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way.
Right, and that's powerful.
It's like, because we stop short, right? It's like we stop with it's okay to not be okay. That's an excuse. It's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way, because Jesus didn't die for us to stay there. He died for us to push forward and mature and to grow and to learn and to take lies and reject it and bring truth. And so it's okay to not be okay.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
And I think some of the hard thing is when you're feeling depressed, the last thing you want to do is put yourself out there. The last thing you want to do is show up to Celebrate Recovery. It's easier just to stay home and just feel that. And so it just takes that extra effort when you're in that low spot to have to do that. And so that's why it's critical that you do surround yourself, and have someone who's like, okay, I see that you're going down, and so I'm going to help you back up.
You have to be surrounded by those people. Because if left to your own will, of course you wouldn't do the things that are scary when you're already.
Even if you want to, sometimes you just physically can't do it. You're just, Okay.
So let's go ahead and get into this, and we'll kind of talk about some of the things that we struggle with personally. I will get us started. So for me, body image has definitely been something I've struggled with for a long time. I was adopted, Caucasian family, and everything was great. But I do remember the first time I realized I was even different. Sorry, don't talk about this a lot. I was in preschool, so 3 or 4 years old. And someone made fun of the way I looked. And I just remember the deep feeling of shame and feeling defective and what did I do wrong? And I think you carry those things with you. And as that kind of stuff progressed, I was always told, and I don't think teachers, this was the 80s, right? I don't think teachers, and I don't think my parents were equipped to deal with that and handle those situations. And so, I was always told to just ignore it. And so, at some point I stopped telling and just, stuffed it down. And so I think from that point on, I always had this really heightened sense of my appearance and my outer, just the way I looked. And so I think that coupled with my crazy personality, I just always have this inner critic just always in my ear. You know, when you're, as a woman, and maybe guys know this with your wives too, like when you start having kids, things on your body change, and that was like kind of a loss of control for me, I think. And so I struggled with eating disorders for many years. And I'm much healthier now. But I definitely I'd be lying if I didn't still struggle, you know, with those things, and just the need to have control over that is really, really strong in my life.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think that's I mean, that's hard.
Yeah.
And I think it's
Yeah.
it's hard, and it's transparent with the three of us, even more so when we think about that other people might watch. So that's bold of you, and I appreciate it. And it's a perfect example of what David was talking about earlier, what Shauna was talking about, when it's like, when somebody might look at you and say, like, what do you have to be
I know, yeah.
worried about?
Yeah.
Like, what's, you know, and I think, but it carries such weight then for that reason.
Well, and I think I'm just so sensitive now about stuff. Like, I remember a few years back sitting around at this very table, actually at a meeting, and another woman, like I think it was cold in here. I'm cold a lot. I had mentioned I was cold, and I remember her saying, skinny people are always cold, like you should go eat a hamburger. And like, you know, funny, haha, but like what I heard was, you're still not good enough. Like there's still something wrong with you.
Wow.
You know?
The if you want to talk about having tanks in your life, like emotional tank or whatever you want to talk, it's almost like somebody just took a sledgehammer to it and everything that was in it just poured out instantly.
Yeah.
And I am in a place, I have nothing. Yes, I have like nothing left to give. I've never been one, because I've always been the guy that kind of, I don't want to say made fun of, but like, that don't make sense to me. The like, I can't get out of bed stuff, and like, I've never been to that point, but I can relate, because if there's days I don't want to go. I mean, I don't want to do anything. I have no ambition. I have no desire. Mentally, I do. I'm like, I want it. Like, I know I gotta do this. But then it's this cycle, right? Because now I'm burdening myself with all this stuff to do.
And then you feel bad
I
about
can't.
yourself.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Yep.
then it just.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then people don't understand that there are moments when I literally just can't do anything. I can't. Mentally, I'm not there. Emotionally, I'm not there. So this is what makes it fun with the chosen calling I have, because as a pastor, it's just like you're just like,
You have to have an endless tank.
you have to have or there's the expectation of having
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And it's it's tough. It's certainly tough. I don't know where it comes from, in the sense that that's what's funny about depression. I'm the kind of guy, like, I want to know the starting point. Like, all right, where's it come from? Like, where's the trigger? You know.
But I think what's good is that you can acknowledge it, and you know from the get-go, like in the morning when you come in, you're like, I don't want to be here. You know, where me, I am so quick to be like, you know, put on this mask and I'm ready. Like I can just be on, you know, at a drop of a hat, which probably isn't super healthy.
No. Well,
but that's just,
not really. No.
I don't know how to turn that off, you know?
Well, there's other things, like, so I'm a very sarcastic person. I like to joke around, but then I'm also learning that humor is the thing that it's a coping mechanism, right? You know, even when I'm depressed, I can still, you know, joke around and stuff like that. But that coping mechanism is there because you don't want people to be like, well, what's wrong with you? I mean,
and that probably takes away from your tank too. I mean, every time you have to be fake and you know, and pretend that you're okay when you're not. You're exhausted.
Like my favorite moments, I'll actually call out something that just happened around this table. I don't remember what we were talking about, but I'll have moments. I'm not joking, and I'll sit there sometimes internally, like laughing to myself, because I'm like, man, I must be like I wonder how people see this. Like something was said, and like all three of you were just like dying laughing, and here I am just like. Yeah.
Sounds about right.
And we love you for not thinking we're funny.
But we are.
But that's the thing that's funny. It's not that it's not funny. It's not that it's just you kind of.
That funny.
That's what I'm saying. I just have finally accepted I'm not gonna laugh just because it's expected, or you know what I'm saying. It's like I'm slowly getting there where it's just like. No, I mean,
It's freedom,
if it's
right?
if it's gonna,
wow.
that's what I'm saying. If I'm gonna, so anyway, I mean, those are the small things I don't think people realize with mental health stuff.
Yeah.
It's the small things. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. Honestly, it really is. It's not the big stuff that causes it. It's
It's a
all
million little
the
things.
little things, right? And I don't say that because I don't want anybody hearing this or watching to be like, you don't want to be treated with kid gloves. You don't want to be coddled.
Right.
You don't want people to all of a sudden like, well, now I can't go talk to them because every time somebody talks to them, it's because then people do the flip side on you, and they treat you like, it's like that's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But what I'm saying is just realize that that's the nature of this beast that it is, and
Well, and I think we expect people to act a certain way, regardless of if you're the pastor, and when they don't, we get offended that they didn't live up to our circumstances or our things. And I just, so to know that, oh, maybe this isn't really about me, maybe you're just having an off day. Like, so when you don't laugh, we don't take it personal anymore. We just know that that's who you are, So I think just realizing that.
we don't take it personal anymore. The conversations after I left, oh my God.
We are funny. But there's where that grace comes in, because we don't know what people are dealing with and what they're going through.
And it's just being honest. It's just that honesty. Like the praise team might, I don't know if they've noticed this, but there's a lot of times when we do a short little devotion before we practice on Wednesdays. There's been a lot of Wednesdays I'll come in and be like, guys, I don't want to be here. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I don't want to be here. And I'll explain. It's nothing towards it. I'm not, But then what's amazing about God is usually after the singing is done, like I'll feel better.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
But it's just like, just be honest. And I think sometimes when I first started doing it, it was like kind of you get the looks of like, because you said like, can we say that?
Yeah.
Is it okay to not want to be here?
Right.
And it's just like, no, let's be honest. If we've had a hard week and this is just you're like, oh, I'm forced to. Sometimes we get in that mindset. I'm going to go do that. Let's just say it. I don't want to be here right now.
Right.
But let's talk about so that's what I love about Psalms. Anybody that struggles with depression, read Psalms, because constantly David was, I'm not happy, and I'm struggling, and I'm angry, or frustrated, or why are you doing this? And then, but every Psalm, he flips it. By the end, he flips it. He'll turn it back to say, but God, you are still good, or God, you are still faithful, or God, your plans are still in place. He would just throw it out, but he'd always bring it back. And I think we need to get used to that. Like, hey, this is where I'm starting from,
Right.
but this is still true.
Right.
So, a lot of this, especially with mental health, but also just our faith and all of this, we put minimum effort and expect maximum results.
Yes.
And that's the problem. And then we complain. And I'm there. I complain. Like, God, why don't? And he's like, you're putting minimum effort. Right? It's like you've taken the talent that I've given you, the talent, of Scripture, and you've buried it, and you expect to be rewarded for it. And it's just like, so where do we start? The working harder is applying the principles of Jesus, applying the principles of truth, and doing it when you don't feel like it, and knowing that it's based on a truth, not a emotion or something like that. So that's where I would say, that's why I appreciate so much the concept of Celebrate Recovery, especially for myself and where I'm at, is it's like, live by these principles, Don't just know them, live them, right? Apply them daily, always, and realize it's going to be from this moment until the day you die, right? It's not.
Well, and I think that, going back to what I said earlier about sometimes it's hard. Like sometimes people just, you hear that. Like I've said that to Tim, like dig into your Bible, do this, and he's just like, I just can't. So to be have a support system. So like we have a dry erase board and I'll write a scripture on there or leave notes in his dash or just text him, different songs and stuff. So I think knowing that, all of that is obvious. You have to do that, but to have, when it's hard and you don't want to open up your Bible, to have somebody say like, we need to do this now. This is, and little by little you crawl out of that, and you're able to do that on your own, and just having some organization and structure, like a to-do list of like, read my Bible, listen to this song, like all those little things that might be hard to do. Just that it becomes just a natural thing, and then as God gives you strength, and I mean, you're able to take some of that over too.
That's why we got to stop chasing after what we want and face what we actually need. You know, we kind of dealt this with a little bit of Celebrate Recovery over the summer, you know, because we're looking at what do we need? What do people need? They need to work these steps. They need to do this work. And some people, you know, are just, you know, and I get it. You know, so it's like, but I like this part. I want this. It's like, great. There are days I want to sit on my couch and eat junk food all day long until I feel miserable. That's what I want. That's not what I need. Right? So a big part of this is, especially in the church, is we've become, well, we throw the consumer driven, but it's like sometimes the church just needs to look at your church or a ministry or a person to say, I don't really care what you want. I don't care what you want. This is what we need. You're not gonna like it because it's not what you want, but it's what you need. And that's where the hard part is. If we really, I mean, so that's a big factor for me because.
So, you know what, guys, I mean, I think this has been really instructive. I mean, it has for me. I think it's been helpful for me to have this kind of long conversation about this. And I think it'll be helpful for people that wonder, why are we doing a mental health series? And I've had that question a couple of times, like, why are we doing a series on mental health? Again, it's not in the Bible, but it is, right? And it's something we struggle with, and it's something that Satan uses to drive a wedge between us and God, and we need to grow. And so I appreciate you guys, the time and the sharing of your stories, and I'm really looking forward to the series. It launches on the 8th of September, and so we're going to get into this. It's going to be 6 weeks, and we're going to deal with some pretty hard truths, and we're going to hear some testimonies from some people that struggle, and so it's really going to be instructive, and I hope that everybody will join us for that. But thank you guys so much.